Dr. Jazz.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Well, you have a moment. I'm leaving for various places in Europe and Scandinavia tomorrow morning. So,
Oh, seriously? Oh, with whom? What projects?
well, I have our daughter Jessica who is going with me. We're spending a better part of a week in Paris visiting friends, and then I have recordings in Gothenburg for the Martin loudspeaker company. That's a high-end loudspeaker company, and they have a recording studio, and they anyway, it's a long story, but it's an interesting project. Jessica is singing, and it's a jazz trio and string quartet. And then I have a week of teaching at Sibelius Academy.
Oh, in Helsinki. Yeah. Okay.
And then there's some work in Germany and in Graz and Vienna, and then I come home. It's a month of work. I'm glad to be busy.
Wow. You'll be in Graz. You'll be like, I'm half an hour south from Graz. So.
Oh, well, it must be in Slovenia?
Yeah, exactly.
Ah.
Yeah. You ever been here?
I was in Ljubljana once.
Oh, really?
In 1990, I believe, just overnight. I can't say that I have any clear memory.
Okay.
It was just passing through on the way from Zagreb to to Germany somewhere. It's a little vague in my mind, but
wow, super. So what are you doing in Graz? You have a concert or at the university?
I'm teaching for a couple of days, and I have a performance with what I hope will be a good student group on May 13th.
Fantastic. Wow, beautiful. Great. Super to see you so busy. I mean, when we scheduled this interview, I think this was one of the first dates we could find almost. So.
Well,
that's amazing.
It hasn't been, I mean, for 2.5 years, it's been nothing. And
I can imagine.
Things got busy. A few weeks ago, I had some work in Illinois, teaching and performing, and it's picking up. And so of course, I feel everybody feels better being useful.
Sure. Yeah, especially. I mean, this was a strange period for all of us.
Yeah.
Bizarre. But I wanted to start our conversation of asking you, we kind of dug into this of you being busy. And, I checked your discography. I thought I followed quite well what you did. I tried to really follow. And you've been extremely productive, like since, I don't know, 2005, 2010 as a band leader.
Yes.
With various, trios and quartets and the jazz orchestra, I mean, the Donette. And
yes.
Where does all this creative energy come from with you and the
desperation?
And the band leading, I mean, that's a good answer. but all the band leading you've done and the writing, like, how do you do it? Where do you get the inspiration usually to write?
Well, I do it because I need to provide myself with continuity from the music that I grew up playing. And unless I control the circumstances, there is little continuity in what is going on around me. And that lack of continuity presents what to me is a profound aesthetic impoverishment and problem for me. I have no relationship with most of what I hear other younger people playing now. And we could discuss that, and maybe we ought to discuss it.
Yeah, please, if you can expand on that. Yeah.
I grew up in a world where jazz was connected with the popular music of the day.
Yeah.
And I thought it was normal. My perspective has changed so that I now understand it wasn't normal at all. That the circumstance of having popular music written by and consumed by educated people was an anomaly historically.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
That this particularly fruitful period from roughly the late end of the 19th century into the little past the middle of the 20th century was a most unusual period. And I'm not enough of a historian to be able to delineate why this happened, why this particular good environment thrived. But I was lucky enough to grow up in it and live in it. And so I benefited from that. And of course, since I grew up in it, I thought it was normal.
Sure.
Now, popular music has deteriorated. And along with that deterioration, what people do with improvised jazz method music has deteriorated as well, and pretty much as popular music has deteriorated from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't relate to it. I don't relate to music which that ignores the most basic issue of musical drama, which is that you have to prepare expectation and then provide a surprise.
Mm. Mm.
And this is the most primitive, most basic kind of description of what happens in durable music. So there's that. What I hear around me lacks that. It also lacks the rhythmic language that I learned to appreciate and to participate in.
Mm-hmm. In what sense? Especially the rhythm.
Well, in terms of what happens with jazz solos, with the kind of melodic improvisation, you started with Louis Armstrong and you went through all of Coleman Hawkins and Charlie Parker and Bill Evans, and it really, in terms of what you can do as an improviser, it doesn't get much better than that. There are a few people who, like Eric Dolphy, who added more kind of dissonant language that was still attached, that remained attached to the core of functional harmony and the normal musical drama that reaches back to Bach and before. I mean, there's a line that goes through that, an unbroken line. Now the line is broken,
Mm.
and people noodle. And there's an enormous, there seems to be an audience for that. And but it has no relationship to me. It doesn't relate to my experience as a human being in the world. Why would I listen to something that doesn't lead me anywhere? And so I got distracted a little bit by my own, I got kind of off topic in a minute, but let me get back to the issue of there hasn't been that much development over the years in melodic improvisation. Charlie Parker, it's really hard to get better than that.
Yeah.
But in terms of what happens in the ensemble, in the piano, bass, drums, guitar, rhythm sections, that has developed enormously since the beginning and continued to develop up to the point where people stopped developing it. And that happened roughly in the late 60s. And now people don't play with any real genuine interaction between the rhythm section and the soloists. The rhythms have been reduced to fewer subdivisions, fewer rhythmic cross rhythms and subdivisions, to the point where people now know how to play eighth note rhythms very well, but swing eludes them. It's a lot harder. And I grew up in a rhythmic culture that combined those two things, that there was always eighth notes and swing going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
Now all the swing stuff is gone. And people are still using jazz tools and jazz methods to make a kind of music that doesn't take advantage of what those tools and methods are designed to be successful at.
Yeah.
And it's an unsuccessful exercise, enormously unsuccessful from my perspective.
Yeah.
So much so that I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's meaningless to me. If it doesn't have a touch of the blues and some swing in it, then okay, there's plenty of wonderful music that doesn't have the blues and doesn't have swing. There's centuries of wonderful music. But in order to make that kind of music that doesn't have blues and swing, you better go back and see what methods Bach and Beethoven and Debussy and Fauré and Prokofiev and Bartók and Stravinsky used to make that music. And you better do all the studying and all the work that you have to do in order to create what is basically Western European culture music. Western, I don't mean exclusively Western European. I mean Western in the big sense.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of lazy people who are getting away with murder.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a harsh one. But
yes. Well, it is harsh, but it's harsh. That's personal.
Yeah, sure.
That's how it affects me. Again, there seems to be an audience for this. I don't understand them. And when I observe that audience, I don't see any engagement.
Yeah.
I don't see the kind of engagement and connection between the creators of that music and the listeners to it that I'm used to. So why do I do all of what I do? I do it because I have no choice.
To create your own landscape, and yeah,
I have to follow the aesthetic. I have to live in the aesthetic world that is meaningful to me. And if that doesn't exist outside, I have to create it. So, and I made that decision actually even while that aesthetic world was still there. I left Bill Evans in 1966. in a situation that was as musically rewarding as I could imagine, because I didn't want to be dependent on someone else for provide. I had felt that I had enough experience in that to force myself to confront the problem of creating that kind of musical world for myself.
Yeah.
And it was not easy.
Sure. Yeah.
It was the first time I did any work in my life, actually. I didn't really start working on music till I was 29 years old. Everything else had come easily to me, more or less. I mean, I say that kind of flippantly, but you're sure I did some work, but the real work started when I was 29.
Kind of like when you went on your own, trying the band leading stuff, and yeah.
Yes, yeah, that was when the real work started.
Is it for you, you know, you being a band leader? I listened to Garden of Delights today, and you know, it's such beautiful. It starts with that skipping tune and goes into so many different landscapes. It always swings, which
yes,
and it always has the melody. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you write? What do you start with? Do you start with the melody? Because when I listen to your compositions, the melody seems to be so important. And maybe I'm wrong. Of course, there's harmony and everything, but like,
I don't really know. Usually, I'm modeling my music on some other music that I already know. Maybe that seems like an admission of some kind, but I don't really see it that way. I don't see any negative, real negative aspect for it. If you're an artist and you're a painter, well, you must get inspiration from other people's paintings. Otherwise, how would you know what you'd like to do? Oh, I see a Giacometti, and I see a Picasso, and I see Rubens, and I see a Van Gogh, and okay, I see all of that, and here is my version of that, and that my music is always a version of something that I've heard before. It doesn't come from being inspired by extra musical experience.
Yeah.
I'm not expressing my pain. I'm not expressing my love of nature. I'm not expressing, not on purpose. I am probably expressing my musical background, my Americanism.
Yeah.
Can't help that. I can't go away. There's no way I can erase that from myself, and nor am I interested in it. So when you ask, what propels the pieces, well, the skipping tune is propelled by Walking Up. Do you know Walking Up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's my version of Walking Up.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And it has certain similar characteristics and certain things that are not. And I got the idea of it from Walking Up.
Yeah.
And then out came the skipping tune.
Yeah.
As a reflection on Walking Up. And one could, you could analyze them and say, okay, Walking Up has this and this and this, and the skipping tune has this, and they're a little different, and they have they have different results. And that's Bill's personal perspective, and this is Chuck's personal perspective on essentially a similar musical idea. So in a way that I work like that with that. Sometimes it's a small kernel of music, just a little idea that gets developed, and that gets developed by the same methods that European composers develop things, by repetition and sequence and inversion and retrograde inversion and augmentation and diminution and all of those little things that we do that make coherent, that allow a listener to understand the coherency of your musical thought and progress.
Yeah.
So, okay, I hope it always has a tune or two.
It seems like it, yeah, when I listen, you know.
I'm also, I think you probably, I think my music has a lot of, it's a lot of counterpoint.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concurrent activities that intertwine in controlled ways. And what I try to do when I'm writing is to give the illusion to the listener that there's a bunch of people who, by some magical property, all thought to do coherent things at the same time.
Yeah. Except, it's composed, yeah.
And that they don't, you don't notice it's composed, but except that, of course, it has to have been, or how could that, you know, how could you have all these characters on stage creating a coherent drama if nobody, I mean, really, you don't put 4 or 5 people on stage and say, improvise a play. It doesn't work. They have to have a script. So I write a script, and then I depend on the spontaneous contributions of the people who are reading that script to bring it to life and to contribute their personal perspective and their immediate response. And I've been super lucky in having relationships with people who will do that, who are kind of guests of the composition.
Yeah, that's nicely put. Yeah.
Okay, the composition is our host, so we are bending our character and our responses to the room that we're in. They don't go off doing things that are unrelated. And I've been very lucky. I think it's been remarkable that I've found people who appreciate that, and they appreciate that the way I appreciated being in Bill Evans's musical room. I never wanted to break out of it.
Sure.
I was perfectly happy staying in that. There was plenty of room for me to do whatever, you know, whatever that music fed me. It only made me want to eat more of it, you know, didn't make me want to go away. And so,
well, when I listen to you now talk about composition, it seems like you really love it.
Oh,
love
sure.
doing it. I mean,
well, you get to play God.
Wow, yeah, nicely put. Yeah, true.
Yeah, because you control the future.
Yeah.
And how many things can you control in life? I'm also a rather meticulous and careful, and I do beautiful engraving work. I mean, if you saw the parts for my music, you would find them very well. Let's see. Well, here's just a lead sheet, but you can see how meticulously notated it is, how full of graphic, you know, it's the graphic design is part of the things I can control. And what I wanted to do is to bring the musician's eye into, I want to attract the musician's eye to the script that's there and make it easily understandable and and in a way proportional and beautiful looking, so that it's not, so that the act of interpreting something with your eyes and bringing it out through sound has the fewest obstacles possible.
Yeah, yeah. I always love that. So looking at the nice lead sheet, that's so beautiful. Like, do you use like computer programs now, like Finale or Sibelius? Or?
Yeah, I use Finale, and I use it because it has the most control over the things that are important to me. I think Sibelius is okay too. There are a few things that Finale does that Sibelius doesn't do as well. Sibelius does much better with lyrics. It handles lyrics much better. But there are some specialized fonts and things that I'm particularly fond of, and that, so I got used to it. And it's hard to learn, but it's no harder to use. It has a longer learning curve. But I don't think it's harder to use. And there is a fellow I hope to meet in Gothenburg in a couple of weeks who makes enormously useful plugins for Finale that do all kinds of things that you can push a button, and for instance, it will take eighth note notation and change it to quarter note, eighth note, triplet notation.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
Or it'll do it backwards.
That helps, yeah.
If you have it notated in 12, in sort of triplets like 12/8, and you want to write it for a jazz musician who doesn't want to see all that crap on the page, you push a button and it happens. And it's tremendously useful. He does wonderful, wonderful things, and I want to buy him a big dinner and thank him profusely for all the time he plans.
That's beautiful. It saves up, on a lot of time when writing now and composing. How was it like when you one of the first compositions probably you did was double clutching, right? Or
yes, and that was just a little counterpoint exercise.
It's like a blues kind of, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was the melodic material is kind of neutral, is kind of harmonically neutral. It's not that. It's unspecific enough that you can put it on a blues and make it work. And what it was there was this little phrase and this little phrase, and they work together.
Yeah.
Or you could take this phrase and this phrase, and it worked. So I was just playing with these little motivic pieces and putting them together in different ways. I put it together 3 different ways. It came out 12 measures, and I made a blues out of it. And it was just sitting on my music stand. I was in college. I was, studying music. And there I was in this recording date with these people older and more experienced than I was. And Kenny Dorham walked over and looked at it and played, and John Coltrane came over and looked at it. Oh, well, let's play this. So it became and I actually, I've developed it a little since then. It's a little better than it was then, but that's how that happened.
What was that, your first recorded composition? Yeah,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
1958.
How did it make you feel back then when this came out actually on the album?
Well, I thought it was going to change my life, but it didn't. I thought I would never have to compete for girls again, but it didn't do me any good. It takes a long time for those things to have an effect, and
sure.
Didn't really do. I'm sitting here looking up in the corner. I have a Grammy award from something I did 3 years ago, inconsequential project that was not. I refer to it as the equivalent of a journalism award from Fox News. It's
Oh my God.
but those things, I don't think they change your life much.
Yeah, it's like a moment of something, and then yeah, it just goes.
It doesn't. I mean, maybe in the long term, somebody will Grammy Award winner, so I'll get a job that I might not have otherwise gotten. But if people aren't interested, that'll only happen if people are interested in what I do in the first place.
Yeah.
And that'll just encourage them. It's not going to. Well, anyway, I mean, at least my experience has been that they don't make as big a difference as you hope they will.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like, you know, getting like a good review in, I don't know, Downbeat. I remember I got like years ago my first review in Downbeat, and I thought it was gonna change. You know, you're gonna get tours, and I don't know what. It's like
you still struggle to get work, of course.
Nothing changed.
Yeah,
nothing. It was all the same. It was so funny. But speaking of work, I wanted to ask you, how did you end on that session with Cecil, Kenny, Coltrane, and Louis Hayes? What's this?
How did I get?
Yeah, how did you get that job, like in that room?
The record producer was a friend, Tom Wilson. It was actually Cecil's record. It wasn't a John Coltrane record, and I was at university at Brandeis University, which is in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 miles from Cambridge, where Harvard is. And Tom had graduated from Harvard, and he had a record company called Transition Records, and it's kind of a long story, but we became friends, and I was a real kind of acolyte of Tom. I loved him, and I wasn't paying attention to school. I was paying attention to hanging out with Tom and helping him run his record company. And at one point he said, "Oh, can you come to New York and play on this record?" And okay, sure, of course. He was my friend, and I didn't feel any, I didn't feel as if I'd be in any danger, even with people who were older and more experienced, because I imagined I would be protected by Tom. Turned out I don't think I particularly needed protection, but I certainly would have felt protected if I had needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how that happened. It was a lot of circumstances happen because you're in the right place at the right time, and
yeah, especially in jazz, like it's like that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you mentioned Eric Dolphy before, and you know, I just Eric Dolphy is for me one of the biggest heroes. I just did like a solo guitar record of all of his compositions, kind of did the hats, and I know you played with him as well. And
I played with him 2 or 3 times. He was a really sweet guy. What a nice man. Very nice man. I was on tour with, I can't remember which happened first. I think I probably worked with him with Gunther Schuller first. Some projects of Gunther's. And then before I worked with Bill, I was on tour with Jerome Robbins Ballet USA. It was a big tour of Europe in 1961. Oh, wow. Long tour of London and London, Amsterdam, Munich, Paris, Venice, Berlin, Copenhagen, and Stockholm.
Oh, wow.
And that it was long. We were a week or 2 in each place. It was the whole long summer. And I was in Copenhagen, played the ballet, and excuse me, someone said, oh, Eric is playing over here at the Rittersalon. And so I got finished early and went over and walked into his concert at the intermission, and he said, "Oh, please come up and play." And so and the nice thing about it is that it was recorded, and eventually I got a check.
Wow.
Which doesn't always happen.
Wow, yeah, that's rare, actually. Wow.
Somebody did, the company did send me a check.
Wow. Was it that the first time for you in Europe, or did you go already before? Like
I had been there I had been before, 2 years earlier. I had spent about 6 months working with Bud Powell and Lucky Thompson.
Oh, really?
And what's that?
No, I didn't know that. Wow. How was Bud like?
Well, Bud was strange.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I mean, he was either, I don't know if Buttercup, his wife, was feeding him kind of psychotropic medication, or I don't know. We're not all there. And his playing, even though it had all of the characteristics that we love, all those beautiful chromatic, all that stuff that is in it, emotionally it felt really distant. And it was what it was. And I was a young kid, and I thought, who is this strange guy? And yes, I hear all this wonderful stuff, but it's this kind of zombie guy just going through the motions of things.
Oh, shit.
So I don't know. There was a lot I didn't know, a lot of youthful intolerance that, on my part, that I look back on that, I should have been spending a lot more time paying attention to inside that strange guy. There had to have been the same person that created all that music in the first place.
But you never talked about music like with him, or?
No. All he wanted was 5 francs for a cognac. I mean, there wasn't any conversation. Kenny Clark, he was a regular person you could talk to. And
yeah, incredible.
And I was very lucky to just have been a kid that had a few skills that were at enough of a level to allow me to be a part of the musical lives of these wonderful people. The fact is, what I was doing was rather minimal in terms of the level of creativity of Bud Powell. I wasn't doing anything at that level, but I could play the bass part.
Yeah.
And now I think, okay, I'm not sure I'm at that level, but what I do as a composer, that's at a much higher level of musical control and creativity than playing the bass part. Even playing the bass parts for Bill, which was more challenging and more complex and more interesting. It still strikes me as a limited activity compared to what I do as a composer.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, now you create your own environment that you want with the composition, which is
yes,
it's a different universe. Yeah. We talked about Bill now so many times. So I wanted to ask you, did you ever hear the trio? I guess you did with Scott and Paul Motion before you joined the band.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
And did you talk with Scott also about music or playing?
We were friendly. On our first meeting, he was dismissive of me. And I kind of knew of him and admired him. And oh, it's just another bass player, you know. Then he was a friend of Don Friedman's, and he came to a recording date that I did with Don, and he heard me play, and he was suddenly had a whole different attitude. Okay, now here's someone who may not be as developed as, you know, I wasn't nearly as developed as Scott, but I was certainly moving in a similar musical direction, and that made him feel that there was some possible relationship. He became interested in a relationship, and we became friends.
Oh, really?
And then, I was at the Vanguard when they made those recordings.
Oh, really? Oh, wow,
Yeah.
man.
And really shortly after that, I left for Europe with the ballet company.
Oh.
And it's complicated, but there's a famous flutist named Paula Robeson, a classical flutist, who sublet my apartment while I was gone. And she and Gloria of Gloria's Step and Scotty became friends in my absence. So all of them around knowing me became friends, and I wasn't there. Anyway.
Bizarre.
But yeah, but sure, I heard of course I heard it, and the idea that this was an exclusive invention of Scotty's and Bill's, it's a little bit off center, because it's really rare that one person or one or two people do something that isn't in the zeitgeist, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there was Charlie Hayden, there was Albert Stinson, and there was Steve Swallow, and me.
Yeah.
And I was there, and we were all hearing things in I wouldn't say revolutionary way, just an evolutionary way in terms of how we perceived the possibilities of rhythm section playing. And then there was a bunch of different drummers who were also participating in this kind of thing. And Paul was okay, but he wasn't among the most interesting and most creative of the drummers. He was very good in that trio. He never was any problem. He played, his time was great, but there were other people who were really more creative and more interesting, I thought, as I learned later, how much more, for instance, how much extraordinarily better developed musician Larry Bunker was.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how it was.
He was really phenomenal. Just
underrated drummer, yeah, incredible.
Great musician.
Yeah.
And Donald Bailey is another wonderful drummer.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the first gig you guys did, or the first time you played with Paul and Bill? Like, how did that feel?
Well, I had a kind of rehearsal audition when I got back from the tour with the ballet company. Telephone call Bill, and how did it feel? I think I had played with him 4 years earlier.
Oh, really?
When he was at Brandeis for a Third Stream concert, and I was a student, and Steve Kuhn and Arnie Wise and I were there. And it's just a long story. It's all in a book. I have the hope that I finally seem to have some publishers interested in.
Oh wow, super!
But there was no jazz in schools, in colleges. So here were a bunch of New York jazz musicians spending a week at this college campus, kind of locked in the campus because it's in a suburban area with no businesses around it. So if they had to go to get something to eat, they had to stay on the campus. And we were there playing in the student union, and they were shocked because it was already a professional level. I mean, not the highest professional level, but certainly a professional level group. We had already accompanied Stan Getz and Coleman Hawkins and in concerts they'd done in Boston. And so Bill and George Russell and Charlie Mingus and Jimmy Knepper and all these guys, what Art Farmer, all of them, what's going on here? Here's some kids that can play.
Yeah.
Joe Benjamin, bass player, who later used to send me on jobs and that he couldn't do. He would refer me for jobs. And so that was, again, being at the right place at the right time. So I think I remember Bill sitting in with Arnie and me for a couple of tunes. And I always knew it was going to feel great. His time was impeccable. And he was such a strong player that you could make a mistake and it never disturbed him. If you did something good that was logical in the music, that made some, or even that disturbed it in some creative way, he would accommodate that. But if you did something disturbing that you didn't really mean, he ignored it. Yeah. So it was great for a young person, you know.
Yeah. How do you see your development as a bass player when you spend, you know, in his trio? Like, you know, I love those recordings you guys did, you know, How My Heart Sings and Time Remembered and, you know, Moonbeams, and you seem to have found like your own personal language. You know, there was a trio with Scott and then your trio with Bill. You found your own self, I think, when I listened to that trio. Like,
I wouldn't know how to be anyone else.
Yeah. How do you see yourself growing as a player? Like, if you say, stupid question, but what did you learn, or like how did you grow as a musician?
I learned a lot about how to fit my general sense of melody that I think is a fairly, it's fairly reliable. I'm a tuneful player, I think.
Yep.
And I learned how to weave those melodic ideas through more subtle chromatic harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And also I learned how to allow that subtle harmony sometimes to be a counterpoint to melodic invention that didn't have to take all of the curly cues of the harmony into account.
Yeah.
Sometimes that harmony can work against and then resolve, and so you don't have to catch everything.
Yeah.
You don't have to treat it like a labyrinth.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned from listening to Bill. He would write out these lead sheets with all these chords, and the bass line, I would follow that bass line and all the contour of the bass line that was complicated and specific. And then he would play, and what he played was it didn't catch all those details all the time. It didn't matter. If it landed at the right place, if it lined up periodically, that was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys ever talk about this? Did you ask him ever about composition, how he writes tunes or stuff?
No, and I regret it. I was scared. I was scared by his enormous musical power and by the fact that he was addicted. And I didn't want to have anything to do. I did, well, again, immature. I didn't understand that in the inside of this addicted, compromised, emotionally and physically compromised person that was certainly compromised by the heroin addiction, no question.
Sure.
At the same time, on the inside of that was this intelligent, brilliant guy. So, and I was afraid of the surface. I was afraid to reach beyond that. I can't go back and relive my life.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah.
If I could, I would be having lots of conversations with Bill and would have learned a lot more. But
was that ever a hindrance, like his addiction, like when you guys were on tour, or like did this affect the playing especially? I mean,
it affected the playing a couple of times when he didn't have access.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh,
Sure. No worries.
Bob Dylan's bass player wants to meet me. Okay.
Oh, cool, man. That's a nice one.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I regret a lot of things about, you would like to go back and relive your past and take advantage of all the things that you missed.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things I didn't miss, a lot of good things happened. And I don't think that I wasted my life, but there are things that I wish I had paid more attention to and dug into a little more deeply. And knowing Bill was one, knowing Charlie Mingus, who was very friendly to me.
Oh, really?
Knowing him better would have been, it would have been a.
How did you meet him?
At Brandeis, at the.
Awesome. Okay.
He was one of the composers of that Third Stream concert, and he heard me play, and he became this kind of Papa Bear, protective mentor to me when I got to New York. He was very sweet to me, and this guy that who frightened everybody, he was always nice to me.
Wow. Yeah, that's why I have the composition Mingus. I saw, I mean, dedication. Yeah. Chuck, I wanted to ask you about, we talked about drummers. How was your experience playing with Tony Williams? And
okay, was okay, but
because he was still really young then, right?
And he sat in once at the Vanguard with Bill.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, man.
And it was okay. It was very smart playing in a lot of ways, and certainly able, but it didn't feel nearly as uplifting and swinging as a lot of other people that I've played with. For instance, Larry Bunker or Kenny Clark or Donald Bailey, or he's a little bit eighth note oriented in his playing, a little bit. And it's okay. That's Pete LaRocca. I used to love to play with Pete.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was okay. We got along fine. If you ask me for the list of my absolutely the drummers that made me feel the best, he was kind of low on that list. Billy Higgins was a lot more fun, and a lot of people, including Arnie Wise, who was just a kind of a regular. He wasn't so brilliant, but he had a wonderful feel in his playing, and but Tony was okay. But we were on we did a commercial together where we appeared on screen pretending to be teenagers. It's a long story, but it was
with Tony.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I forgot a mental block. Killer Joe composer.
Benny Golson.
Benny Golson. I'm sorry. Yeah. Benny Golson had this soft drink commercial, and they had a bunch of teenage kids dancing. They had to have a bass player and drummer. It looked like I was 29, but I looked 19 or 18, and they white shirt and jeans and sneakers, and Tony and I were on this commercial. I have the 16 millimeter film of it in my closet somewhere, but anyway. No, we got along fine, but and it was okay, and I liked being on the record with all those guys, with Herbie, Dr. Bird, and Hank Mobley, whom I loved his playing.
I'm such a fan also, and Grant Green was also on that one, right?
Yeah, and he played well. I mean, and I know people like his playing, and I don't have any, I think it's perfectly fine. I know other guitar players that I think are, well, just as good, or that I have just as much fun with it, and who don't have the reputation that he has. But anyway, there was a whole bunch of good people, and they all played great.
Amazing, yeah. I seem to be so busy when I look at your discography and the records I have you on.
But it's only 10 years.
Yeah, I know that this early 60s period.
It's only 10 years. That's it.
But that's incredible how busy you must have been that period.
Well, I was so busy that when Bill dropped me and took on, names, Gary Peacock, didn't bother me. I was so busy. Then he called me back. Okay. I was working with Stan Getz, and then then back to Bill. It was like there was work all the time, and it was all work that I could relate to. Now, if there's work for a bass player, it's not going to be work I can relate to.
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
Yeah.
I can't feel anything for that, for the music that's going on.
Yeah, you basically created, this music in the late 50s, early 60s. So, I think you have the right to say that and to do that. So,
well, and it isn't. It's not only. To a certain extent, it's my personal response to the environment, but it's also the environment itself. There has been an enormous change to the environment.
Yep.
And people who are growing up now and creating music now do not have the fertile soil in which to grow the best music. It's not there. The understanding of the audience is not there. The feedback that you get from the audience is not there. You have no way of, and the surrounding atmosphere is so polluted that how do you find good air to breathe in that? You have to be really selective. And I think that we have a culture in which there is a substantial number of people who are being made aware and helped to be aware of what to eat and how to avoid polluting the environment as best we can. But there's no parallel in the musical world. There's no musical nutritionists that people are listening to. I try to be one of them, but I don't have much influence.
But I wanted to ask you here, just if you expand on the feedback of the public. So it means when you play it in the early 60s, how was it different with this regard on a concert?
Well, it's even different. It's different when you engage the audience and they're actually entranced in a way and follow the
thread,
the musical drama, the line of the music and the development of it and the things that change and the things that are surprising and the things that reward them. If they are with you, you know it.
Yeah.
And I know it because I've felt that many, many times. And I know it when it's not working. I know it when it's not working when I'm playing, and I know it's not when it's not working when I'm observing other people listening.
Yeah.
And the audience is not in general, you don't have enough, if you filter out and get just a small group of people who have some education and some background in this, and they can be with you, you can have the experience of this actual communication. But if you just take the general audience, the people who are out there, listen, I watch television and I see some late night television show or Saturday Night Live or something, and I see what music they put on at the end of it. And I think, and sometimes I watch in a kind of morbid fascination with what is it that they're doing, but it has no relationship to my experience as a musician or even to my experience as a human being. I don't relate. Those people, whatever they're doing, they're not doing anything that anybody I grew up with did. That's not. They must be regular people when they get off the stage, but they're behaving like some strange, I don't know.
Yeah. No, what you mean. Yeah. It's bizarre. Yeah. It's bizarre, especially, I guess, from your perspective. Yeah. It's, I can totally get you. So, yeah. Cool.
So
great, Chuck. Yeah.
So all I have to do is keep doing this stuff that I do that I relate to.
Yeah. But
so again, you ask me, why do I do it? Desperation. I have no choice. Or the other choice is just to stop, and I wouldn't know how to do that. No,
sure. But you seem to have a lot of creative impulse still going on, So I think it's good that you do it because, you keep writing, you keep playing, and that's so beautiful to see that. I mean, after all these years, that's incredible, actually. Yeah.
Keep punching away.
Yeah, you're right.
I think I will do it for a while. Sometimes I think if I could find someone who played the bass who could play the bass in my music and who would approach it the way I approach it, would be okay. I'd be glad to write and listen and kind of fuss with the outside of it and appreciate it from the outside, because it's a pain in the ass to have to be in the inside of it and the outside of it at the same time.
To lead, yeah, and play.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, you have to have part of you out there in order to have a sense of the whole business. And then you have to have a part of you in here doing this job. And if you're doing this job 100%, you don't have that other 100%, the other percent that you need to be out there. So it's always a conflict and compromise. I think Charlie Mingus had the same problem.
Yeah.
And it's and I think it's one of the reasons he seemed to be as difficult as he sometimes was, because it was frustrating.
Yeah. Can imagine.
It's hard to do that.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. I also do my own tours, and then meet with the promoters, talk with them, then actually play
Oh,
music.
that's another story. Yeah.
And, you know, write music. That's
That's
the whole other part. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that for 2 or 3 minutes. I worked at the Jazz Showcase in Chicago,
Mhm.
and had a contretemps with the owner, because we had a quick rehearsal, and then they were going to let the people in, and they immediately turned on music.
Oh yeah.
And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this. I'm not even going to play. I'm leaving. If you don't turn that music off, I cannot think about what I'm going to play. I don't have room in my head to use all the effort I have to do to reject this music, to keep my mind free of it. Fortunately, the guy was reasonable, but there's lots of places I go that they won't turn it off.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's like going to a restaurant. You're going to have fresh fruit prepared for you, and while you wait in line to get your table, they feed you canned peas.
It's kind of like that. Yeah.
What's the point?
It's even worse if they play your own record before.
It doesn't matter what it is, right? It doesn't matter.
Oh, man.
It doesn't matter.
But yeah, bizarre the whole business aspect.
So this one of the examples of how the atmosphere is polluted. That's pollution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's good or not. I mean, it can be good music, but in that circumstance, it's pollution. Just as if you would go to hear a string quartet play the Ravel quartet, and they were playing Haydn string quartets as you walked on the loudspeakers as you walked in. What is the point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a bizarre world we live in somehow. It has to be constantly fed with information. That's the idea they provide to us.
And yet, at the same time, I can sit here in Portland, and you can sit there in Slovenia, and we can have a conversation.